This is Juan Estrada with District 5 United. We also have Captain Jason Tao with the San Jose Police Department.
Thank you, Juan, for setting this up for us tonight and inviting me to just give a quick little presentation. I will make it very brief. I know there's probably a lot of questions, but I hope to save some time for those questions. And get back to this topic because it's a very important topic as well. So I'm going to share my screen real quick, and I'm just going to go through a very quick way for the community to be able to look at crime events in their neighborhood. So I'm going to go, let me see if I can figure this out. Can you guys all see that? I hope so. I'm going to go back to this main page. This is a sanjosepd.org website. Once you get to this main website, you're going to click on this crime stats and maps. You're going to go down to crimemapping.com. Click on that. It will take you to this screen where you look, where you click on view crime maps in my neighborhood. You click I agree to the terms after you read it. And then it'll bring you to this screen here. And this screen here basically is just a summary of the last 7 days. You can see from this date to this date, 7 days, there are 768 crime reports that were generated. And then you'll have some options over here on the far left. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to put in a different location. That's a citywide view. So I'm going to put something kind of local to the area. And then I'm going to use what's called a radius function. So I'm going to pick the Alum Rock Library. It's going to be a half-mile radius, and I'm going to apply. Once you hit the apply button, it'll kind of zoom in on the location that we put in there. So you can put your address, you can put any other locations. You can even put a zip code at the very top left where I'm hovering to just fill out the location. I'm going to expand our search on the when button here. Instead of just 1 week, I'm going to select 4 weeks. And that will give me, as you can see here, 26 records within the time parameters that we chose. And what's showing up here is different icons, and they represent something different. So they'll kind of tell you, if you click on one, it'll give you a little bit of a summary on what it is. So for this one here, this icon of a car represents a motor vehicle theft. It'll tell you the occurrence, Alum Rock at Morrow Drive, the date and the time of the incident. It will also give you right here a case number. So this is really important for me because we have a lot of events that are working throughout the day, and to find this case number saves me an enormous amount of time in the event that we have a question that really needs to be further explored that isn't given on this kind of a platform. So I'm going to look through here, and I'm going to show you a couple of neat little functions. I'm going to close this here. You can look at a report view, which will give you more of a spreadsheet kind of review. It'll tell you what the icon is, which is disturbing the peace. This is an assault. It'll also give you the basic information with case number, location, time, and date. You can go back to the map if you want, or you can click on this other icon here for charts. So I'm just going to go back just to make it a bit simpler. Go to the charts. It'll give you a different view. So this will kind of show you a pie chart for the month that we looked at. And as you can see, the bulk of the crimes were assaults. So we had 7 assaults in the month. It breaks down the different days that these assaults occur. You can see that it's color-coded. All the legend is up here. And you could just click and try to find some more information out from the main screen. And that's pretty much a quick and dirty kind of presentation on the website. I'm gonna go ahead and unshare my screen. We'll just go back to normal. we can. And what I'll do now is I'll just give you kind of a brief summary of the crime trends kind of citywide. So citywide, what we normally look at, we look at the three main crime types. We look at robberies, aggravated assaults, and burglaries. So because of COVID, we're seeing a different type of a pattern this year. We're seeing a little bit more domestic assaults. So the aggravated assault levels have kind of elevated in the way of domestic assaults. We are experiencing a little bit of a rise in gang crimes. So that also adds to our aggravated assault numbers. We're also seeing disturbances involving debt. So debt between people, debt between landlords and tenants. There's just debt-related incidences that are occurring. As one of the other callers had talked about earlier about speeding, there's a lot of speeding, a lot of sideshow activity that we're trying to curtail. Oftentimes, you guys will never see it because we have a strategy on trying to disrupt their congregation areas. If we're able to do that, we're able to at least kind of chase them throughout the city. They end up getting tired and they go to another city. That is intense manpower issues with that. So we do our best to try to prevent that from erupting in our city. You will, though, see some of the smaller ones. I'm talking the larger ones that we're trying to disrupt are the 200 to 400 cars and people type of an incident. And just a couple of other just side notes. Homeless concerns are very prevalent right now. Homeless issues regarding garbage, abandoned vehicles, parking vehicles of homeless living in those vehicles. That is very much on the rise, and we're dealing with zero bail. So zero bail is essentially where, because of COVID, the jail population really doesn't want to mix a whole bunch of people in there for obvious reasons and transfer the virus inside a confined area. So a lot of crimes, particularly ones that do not involve violence, such as gun possession, narcotics possession, those are considered non-violent traditionally, and they get a zero bail status and released immediately with a notice to appear for court pending. So last thing I wanted to do, that kind of summarizes my presentation, but last thing I wanted to do was just to see if, Juan, you were able to let Sandra Garcia, she's from Crime Prevention, just kind of plug maybe a quick 30-second plug on some upcoming Neighborhood Watch Zooms that we have scheduled for the East Side. And then I'll take questions after that.
Absolutely. I just promoted Sandra to panelist. As soon as you stop sharing your screen, she can share her video.
I am not very versed with.
I think at the top, well, it depends. I'm on.
Oh, gotcha. Okay.
There you go. All right.
Just a quick tidbit that we are actually providing neighborhood watches for the Bay Area via Zoom. So a lot of us, you know, there's no more because of the social distancing, but we still are, you know, attending presentations, doing presentations, and most importantly, doing our neighborhood watches to go over what just Captain Ta just went over. So if anybody's interested, please call the Crime Prevention Unit at 408-277-4133. Thank you.
Thank you, Sandra. Okay, I'll take questions.
And I'll read the first one. Kathleen Kirkpatrick had to or lost her connection. I was asked to read the question. It says, we are a condo development on Alum Rock Avenue. We have two urgent issues to discuss with you and would welcome a private meeting. There is an illegal medical marijuana store next to us. They've been operating for 2 years. We reported it and nothing changed. Their customers park on our property to smoke and enter our common area courtyard to smoke. This is dangerous and illegal. What can be done by the city to stop this trespassing and close it down? Item number 2, we have a homeowner doing alleged illegal activities for years and the police department are aware. They're frequently called for this unit, and due to the delay in arrival, the owner has left the property. Their neighbor calls monthly, read domestic abuse on top of their activities. Can we, our homeowners association board and homeowners association manager, meet with Captain Ta? Can't say more on this forum. I believe they also emailed me, so I can forward you their email if you wanted to contact them.
Okay, let me address the first question, the medical marijuana.
Sure.
We could certainly have a discussion. I am not very versed with marijuana laws. A lot of marijuana laws are regulatory in nature. So what that means is now that we have essentially legalized marijuana, there are certain kind of guidelines that are regulated not by the police department per se, but by another regulatory entity. Very much like ABC, when alcohol was kind of reintroduced back into society, there's a whole kind of segment of a branch of enforcement and regulatory oversight. Right now, that goes through our gaming division, I believe, and that is outside of the police department. We do have a representative within our department that sits in that setting. So we can go over that, and I can probably get a little bit more educated myself and certainly have that discussion. So the second one, the alleged homeowner that is having some sort of activity. I'm not really sure what that means. I can talk in generalities about a lot of similar questions that I'm asked about activities within neighborhoods. Sometimes activities fall within what we consider non-crime related activities, but they are very suspicious in nature. So with that, I mean, we can certainly make a call for service, and officers can do an investigative, what we call investigative inquiry that really doesn't leave us a lot of jurisdiction for any type of detention or arrest situations. So on some of those, that's going to be a little bit tricky. And I will be just completely candid. The sentiment right now with folks that are stopped or detained or even stopped on a car stop, it's a very different flavor than it has been in the last 25 years. And so officers really, need some sort of probable cause or some sort of crime violation to make a detention to certainly lead to an arrest. So when we talk about violations that are happening in a neighborhood, a lot of those violations may fall outside of the purview of the police department, although people will say, I believe criminal activity is occurring. That's reported to us a lot, and it may or may not be occurring, but oftentimes what I see is there are a lot of code enforcement violations, and code enforcement inspectors can get involved and can have some sort of civil penalties or fines for homeowners or people that are committing those type of infractions.
All right, next we have Brenda with the question for Captain Ta. I'm sorry, it wasn't Brenda. My mistake, it's Jewel. Jewel, you could share your audio and video whenever you're ready.
I think I called her a few days ago.
Yeah, okay. Hi, how is everybody? Just to backstep a tiny bit, Rolando, thank you very much for your presentation. I have some questions for you. If we don't get to it at this session, I'll make a point to get in touch with you. So, hello, Captain Ta, how are you? Thank you for your service to District 5. We know you guys work really hard. There's a lot going on in San Jose, and I'm going to use the term that not everyone likes to hear, systemic and institutional racism. We have that in our police force. It's unfortunate. So as a neighborhood commissioner, what I'm relaying to you is information that has been told to me by residents and community members. We need competent, ethical action. Chief Garcia is accountable. They want to know what is the status of police reform in San Jose. The city of San Jose is the 10th largest city in the nation. Our tag should not be one that reflects systemic racism within our police department, and it's there. We don't like it. We're not saying all officers, but it is there. There are residents in D5 who will not call the police for fear of retaliation and hyped up confrontation by overzealous officers. In our neighborhood, a large number of the residents are Spanish speaking, so they come to me with their concerns. I have reiterated to them, the police are here to protect you. If you come into an issue where you feel you're being retaliated against, or a police is being confrontational with you, you have resources under which you can report that officer. So I want to share that with you. The other thing was, will there be an open, transparent report made into the named police officers who intentionally harmed the peaceful protesters, not the antagonists, but the peaceful protesters in the recent Black Lives Matter protest? One demonstrator was intentionally shot in his groin area. I don't know if you know him. I think I can say his first name because he works with, Chief Garcia knows him, and he works with the police as a community advocate. He was shot in the groin with a rubber bullet. He can no longer have children. He wasn't being violent. He was out there trying to calm things down. So anyway, that was the question that came up. Will there be an open, transparent report made into those named police officers who intentionally harmed protesters? And then the other question, I'm wondering if Chief Garcia, who I respect, he has a big job. I'm wondering if he has watched those videos. Some of them are horrifying. Some of them frighten me. Some of them make me frightened to call the police. So that's what I wanted to share with you. And Captain Todd, at some point, if we could know how to have officers visible within the community, actually not just driving their car up and down the street, but actually stopping, maybe even talking to neighbors, maybe saying hello. If you see somebody out there watering their lawn, I don't think water is harmful. You could stop and say hello, or how are you doing? Are there any problems? We're not seeing that in District 5, and it's a shame.
I will say I wholeheartedly agree with you that Chief Garcia has a really difficult job. We are in a very difficult time in our police department. We certainly have seen that we are not perfect. We are people. People make mistakes. And I think as an organization and our obligation to the community, we have to identify what those mistakes are and deal with them. So how are we doing that? And so what we are doing is we've always had processes in place to deal with misconduct. And I understand the sentiment that people are afraid of cops. And we have worked very hard in the past few years to try to bridge that feeling with our walking beats. So we've been doing much more walking beats within all areas of the city, specifically in D5. But we can do, we can do more, and we would like to try to do more.
When did those walking beats begin?
Hold on one second.
What areas are those walking beats in?
We had them in various areas throughout the city, but the main one for D5 was Poco Way. And I agree with you. I think that part of the solution is that relationship between the officers and the community. And we have several different shifts. We have 2 shifts during our day shift. We have 2 shifts during our swing shift. And we have 2 shifts during our graveyard shift. So there's always a different officer kind of working throughout the different hours of the day. It becomes problematic. My strategy, though, out in Foothill has been to utilize our community policing officers. These officers are assigned specific community neighborhoods, so that way they constantly come out to reoccurring meetings, and they get to know the people that come to the meetings. They get to like people, and people hopefully get to like them, and they have a little bit more ownership, you know, when you develop that trust and that relationship. So I wholeheartedly agree with you. There are problems in our police department as well as every other police department in the nation. Just a little tidbit of my background and my history. When my family immigrated from Vietnam, we lived in Mobile, Alabama in the 70s. So I'm not immune to the sentiment that you're expressing here. I've kind of witnessed it where I grew up, and we need to do better to try to change that. So I think we are on our way to doing that. There is, at the end of the month, scheduled to be an after-action report that is going to really depict our response to some of the civil unrest and the protests and how we dealt with it, and hopefully identify some really key factors that we can do better. With regard to actually naming the officers, I don't know if that is going to be on the report itself. I suspect that it's not, because we have some personnel issues.
Oh, no.
There.
I wasn't suggesting that those named officers be presented to the public, but suggesting that those named officers, and most of us know who they are. I've seen one officer's name pop up 4 or 5 times, that those named officers, you know, a report or something be published. So if it's coming at the end of the month, I think that's good. And I mean, you're totally right. There's imperfection in every company at every level. What's been happening in San Jose precedes Black Lives Matter. I think Black Lives Matter was the bomb that exploded. Unfortunately, I'm very aware of this because serving as commissioner for D5, I've heard these stories over and over and over again prior to the protests for Black Lives Matter. And anyway, so it precedes that, and hopefully we can get to a point where our members, our community residents, particularly in D5, are not concerned about going to the police. That shouldn't be.
I agree with you.
That should not be. And I was born and raised in East San Jose, and when we were kids, the 2 things that you wanted to be was either a fireman or a police officer. Not so much anymore.
Well, this is certainly something that we are kind of experiencing coast to coast. As you guys know, there's incidents that are occurring everywhere, and I think it does show some of the relationship vulnerabilities that some agencies have with their community. And so I think this is good in the sense that I believe that some positive reforms will come about it, and we're going to make some positive changes that will make our department even better. And I hope someday soon that, again, this is the number 1 and number 2 job for San Jose residents.
All right, thank you, Jewel. And I believe you're on the Neighborhoods Commission, is that correct?
Yes.
All right, thank you for serving on the Neighborhoods Commission of the City of San Jose. Next up, we have Peggy Cabrera.
Hi, Captain Ta. Hi, Rolando and Juan and everybody. So I want to thank the last speaker for bringing up the issue that she did, because it reminded me of my really deep concern. I did write today to the police chief, and I sent him an email about it, but I just think it's important to say, and that is that the recent video of the police officer kicking the woman and dragging her to his car was awful. It was awful for that woman to go through that when she was, from all looks of the video that I saw, being compliant. It's awful for the children and the other women in the car. And I understand, at least from the article that I read, that the police were frustrated because they've been trying to track down that car. But what I'm concerned is, first I read that the police officer was placed on administrative leave. And then today I read that this officer was put on a desk job. And I want to know, why isn't this officer being fired? Because that was an awful thing for that person to do to that woman, regardless of whether she was the suspect or not in that car. You don't do that to our community. And I don't feel comfortable having this officer continue on the police force. I don't think that person deserves this job. And then secondly, the only reason why we know about it was that food deliverer person videotaped it. So wasn't there a videotape from this officer as he was going through this with this, suspect? And if not, why not? Don't they have cameras, and shouldn't they be using it, especially if they are trying to pull over, a stolen vehicle? Don't you think that would be part of the protocol? So I haven't heard an email back from the chief. I just want to know, why is this person still working for the San Jose Police Department? I don't understand it.
So Peggy, I appreciate your question, and what I saw was very disturbing too. I don't have an excuse for it. It shouldn't have happened. I will talk about the process itself though. When there is a allegation against an officer, an investigation is conducted. It's timely because everything has to be examined. All the body-worn camera footages have to be looked at. All the dispatch records have to be looked at. The crime reports have to be looked at. People that were there have to be interviewed. So it's a totality of the investigation. One video is a small segment of it all. Even though video is pretty clear, sometimes it doesn't capture every angle. And so that's why the investigation looks at all the other footages that may be available, all the eyewitness testimony that may surface something that the video doesn't, and then an opinion is rendered. With officers, there is due process, just like with anybody arrested for a criminal violation, there is due process. We're not going to see those decisions unless they are severely criminal in nature, like we see in other places in the United States right now. We're going to see the administrative process take its course. It is a little bit timely. There are appeal processes that are embedded within that process itself, and then that's when discipline is rendered. So I can't really speak to what's going to happen after the entire investigation is done. There are several investigations, as you guys already are probably aware of, officers with regard to the protest. There are several lawsuits already open as a result of some of the actions at the protests. So those things, again, take a lot of time. And I understand it's very frustrating for the community to see and hear that this person is being placed on leave while the process is commencing.
Well, what I can say is, I understand what you're saying, and I think there should be a due process, but I don't think that woman, even as a suspect, what due process gives the officer a right to kick her or drag her the way he did? She did not get her due process at all, in my opinion.
I understand what you're saying, and I agree with you. I think that video looks horrendous. I will say that officers, as I had referenced earlier, are people. People get wrapped up in the moment. they do things that oftentimes they probably, if they were not in a stressful situation, would have the forethought of thinking it out more clearly. Um, I'm not making excuses for anybody. Everybody's accountable for their own actions, but certainly I think that you know, that video, as well as some of the backstory, is all a factor of that complete and total investigation.
All right, Peggy, thank you for your question.
Thank you, Peggy.
We'll next go to Paul Zuniga.
Hi, can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay, I'm Norma Zuniga. I'm Paul Zuniga's wife. And I just had a question for Captain Jason. We live in front of Mount Pleasant Park, and we have been witnessing quite a bit of people out here in the park. I know it's hot, but they're not practicing safe social distancing or wearing masks. What can we do? We called 311 and there's no response. So how can we prevent these individuals from gathering?
Okay, that's a good question, because we are actually working with the county on some of these social distancing health code violations. So there is and I don't know if maybe Juan may have it, but there is a county, I think it's a website where you could fill it out. It funnels through the county. Then they figure out where it's occurring, and then they ship it over to wherever it's occurring. So if it's occurring in the sheriff's jurisdiction, they send it over to the sheriff's department. If it's happening within San Jose jurisdiction, then it goes to our handle. Once we get it, we will send an officer out, whether it's a business. I think you guys may have seen the salon that we had visited the other day that was allegedly cutting hair inside. So we will go out and we will verify whether or not the code is being adhered to. Sometimes it's kind of difficult. I will tell you that if you kind of come up to, in your example of a park, and people are, let's say, 5.5 feet apart from each other, and some people are closer to each other, but they're family members, we actually still have to go out and kind of verify. And the whole reason why police officers are in uniform and they're in a marked vehicle is so people can readily identify us, which is good when people want help, but it can be a little bit frustrating when you're kind of walking up to, let's say, a violation, whether it's a health code violation or whether it's something else, and then they stop their behavior. So, or they see you coming, you know, from far away. So,
Right. Well, the city has actually, you know, put barriers not to be on the picnic tables or the playground. People do not respect any of those, you know, barriers that the city employees have put out. So obviously they are not concerned about spreading the virus, nor are they concerned about having their children playing on, you know, playground equipment that can easily, you know, pass on the virus to their children.
yeah, and I second your concern. I want to get out of this shelter in place kind of abyss that we're in right now. And I feel personally that if people would just adhere to some of the safe distancing and just really don't go anywhere unless they really have to, and wear their masks, we will get out of this quicker.
Yes, I
And,
agree.
but I do understand that people are they feel kind of like cabin fever. I get that, and that's why a lot of the parks are kind of activated and people are trying to be. I've seen people try to be responsible when they're out exercising, but they're just understand there's a lot of people in this city, and there's only so many areas that they can go, and so I think people do generally try to do the right thing for their safety as well as the safety of others, and so we are trying to be very very flexible when we do encounter people that perhaps don't really know that they're violating the code, because the code is constantly changing. Also, it's not as concrete as you might think. One day it's up, and then 2 days later it's repealed. So we try our best to just get people educated. The people that are repeat offenders, though, they do receive citations.
Okay, thank you.
Welcome.
All right. I will pose questions for Trudy Ellerbeck. Earlier, she noted she did not want to be promoted to panelist. So her first question is, Captain, can you speak to the event that took place on Clayton near Harvest?
Juan, do you have more details than that? We have so many events. Could you tell me what type of crime type it might have been?
I don't. So if Trudy posts more information, I will. Her next question is, how is indecent exposure prioritized?
Okay, so that's a good question on the indecent exposure, because I think we get this a lot with people that are urinating in public, and a lot of homeless people around right now. In a nutshell, indecent exposure has to have some sort of intent for sexual gratification. So if somebody exposes themselves because they're urinating in public, or they're defecating in public, or they perhaps don't even realize that they're exposing themselves because of the clothing that they're wearing is not concealing their privates very well. Unless we can prove that they're doing it for some sort of sexual gratification, it does not qualify as indecent exposure.
All right, thank you. Next, Joe Mosley. I believe you had another question. You're on mute.
All right, Captain Ty, how are you?
Hello, Joe. Good to see you again.
Yeah, same here. Hey, I have a question for you. One, I'm just wondering, have the Black Lives Matter protesting, has it had any impact on the response time for any of our officers out in our neighborhoods?
Okay, so when there are protests, it depends on how the protests go. Generally, without giving up too much of our tactics, we have to have people ready to deal with a protest that becomes violent. And so typically, if we start seeing the numbers kind of swell up, then we start kind of getting our people together just in case we have to deploy. That's just to ensure the safety of the community if it becomes very violent. So to answer your question plainly, is that if we have a protest that seemingly is kind of small and looks very peaceful, it probably won't operationally affect us. We have usually about 100 officers at any given time in the patrol structure. We have some specialized units as well that we can draw from if necessary. That's usually another maybe 15 officers, so about 115 total.
Yeah,
If though,
I guess I'm sorry. I think my question was meant to ask, has it had any prolonged effect on response time, considering there got a lot of officers out there working overtime, you don't have enough staffing? That's what I meant by, the protesting. Has it had an impact on your officers as far as response time or filling in any gaps that may have occurred because of lack of staffing and plus overtime?
yeah, so the first week that we experienced a high level of protest, it kicked off on that Friday, and we literally went, some of our guys went 7 days, especially the special operations personnel, working 20 hours each day. So they're literally just going home to sleep for a few hours and coming right back. So we had to rest our folks after that first week. So that week was very difficult. As the weeks kind of went on and the protests were not as what we were experiencing that first week, we were able to kind of normalize our staffing. So at the moment right now, it's not inhibiting staffing. But as you know, Joe, I mean, we're very thinly staffed for a city of 1 million people. We have about 1,100 officers, which is very, very small. So there's a lot of need in the community, a lot of calls for service, especially on the swing shift hours. So you may still be experiencing a slight wait if it's priority 3 or higher between 8 p.m. and 1 a.m.
And then my other question is how is the morale of your of the police department right now?
Well, I'll be candid with you. I think everybody, every human being would like to feel appreciated. I know the large majority of our community does respect law enforcement, respect law and order, and really appreciate us trying to preserve that for them. Unfortunately, right now, those accolades are probably not very numerous right now. And so I think that the general sentiment is guys are feeling a little bit, you know, little beat up. But you know, I mean, that's just part of this job. We do have peaks and valleys. Bad things happen. We have to remain transparent and remain accountable. And the people that do things that they shouldn't do, that is the best remedy for the people that do the right thing every single day that nobody ever sees or recognizes.
And the last thing I want to just mention, I think the department is going in the right direction. Eddie is listening. Captain Garcia, I know him as Eddie. He's taking the department in the right direction. He's listening to communities' concerns, and this has been going on for quite some time. It's going to take some time for some healing to occur. And I know back in the day, they used to have a program called the Neighborhood Citizens Academy, where they used to bring citizens in with the police department and show them, the ins and outs of police work. And I think that was very, very beneficial back in the day, where community members actually got a chance to see how the police department works and have a better understanding, even regarding to prioritizing calls or things of that sort. And that might be something that you guys may want to take a look at again once things get started. Get this police academy or citizen academy back up and running, and help develop that trust factor that we kind of lost from the community to the police. There's some good things that used to happen back in the day, and we just kind of, for whatever reason, again, this is my own opinion, kind of was put aside. And I think that program was really beneficial for not only for the police department as far as building relationships and building bridges, but also for the community to understand how police actually work, and not look at it as some program, Law and Order or whatever on TV. Get a first-hand knowledge of how we actually operate. So, but my hat's off to you guys. You guys got a tough job. And I think we're headed in the right direction. Hopefully we'll get better with time.
Yeah, I think we will too, Joe. Thank you.
All right, last two questions for Captain Ta. Trudy provided more information. And this was regarding Clayton, and I forget the other street name, but a supposed drug raid this morning about 7 a.m. if you have any information.
I do. So that was a search warrant that we executed. There was, when we do a high-risk search warrant, we use a very controlled entry method. So there is a possibility that because of that slow method, that narcotics could be eliminated in some way before the people actually come out of the house. We did seize a large amount of weapons. Machine guns, handguns, ammunition, narcotics, paraphernalia, and things of that nature. So that was a long-term investigation that was incepted by a very young and very productive officer that works out in the east side of San Jose. I think Trudy may have met him. He was one of our community policing officers last year. These officers, they work very hard to try to keep the community safe. There's a lot of guns and a lot of drugs circulating out right now. You can see some of the chiefs' recent social media. There is a lot. So that's part of what happened this morning. So I'm sorry I didn't know exactly what you were talking about, Trudy, firsthand, but there's just so much going on.
Captain, thank you for taking the time. Thank you for answering questions.